y'all, and welcome to Geospatial Experiences. I'm your host, Melissa Mayo, and I'm an Esri engineer on the product team. This podcast focuses on the application of geographic information. Let's go on a journey together with some of my amazing coworkers, along with Esri customers, partners, and distributors who are doing really cool work in the field of GIS. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us with the podcast today. I'm super excited. The guest we have today is really interesting. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation that I have with him. He is someone that I have recently met, and I've really grown to enjoy conversations and getting to know him a little bit. So we're going to jump in today. We have James Filloramo here. He is an account manager on the global water practice team here at Esri. He has an amazing background. He's got some really interesting things to talk to us about. So, hey, James, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks so much for having me today.
I'm so excited to chat with you. We had a really good kind of starter chat the other day, and I know that the things that you're going to cover with us, I know people are going to really enjoy it, and it's going to be super interesting. So I just really appreciate you coming on.
Good. Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm super excited to share.
Thanks so much. So James, tell me about, your background, your history. How'd you get here? Tell me about your journey.
Yeah, thank you. I was born in Gaithersburg, Maryland, right outside of DC, and then grew up in North Carolina after a little stint in West Virginia. But yeah, while I was growing up in North Carolina, I went to Appalachian State University, and that's where I discovered biology, ecology, and GIS, and the love that I have for them. So yeah, one thing that kind of connected all of those places was Eastern hemlocks, where I realized when I started studying them in North Carolina that they were at my childhood playground in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and that they'd always been kind of around me. So yeah, it was one of those first things that gave me a taste of geography or the spatial distribution of hemlocks across the East Coast.
Something that was always really interesting to me over that entire period was trees. So when I got to the Southern Appalachians to study at App State, I realized that a lot of the trees I see there are the same ones that I saw up north in Maryland, like hemlocks in particular. So yeah, I think that that kind of kicked off some of my interest in location, tying right into botany, ecology. I also ended up doing a lot of research through my time at Appalachian State, which, sort of introduced me to GIS. So I think I supported 4 or 5 master species where we would go out and collect data, run some analysis in the lab, do some work in ArcMap and all that good stuff. And then I also did my own thesis where I decided to again study hemlocks, Eastern and Carolina hemlocks. So yeah, that's sort of where my history in GIS started. And then after I graduated from college, I found utility GIS, working at Duke Energy. And then, yeah, after about a year and a half there, I found my way into Esri.
Awesome. That's amazing. I love it when I hear about somebody getting into it. There's something like botany or finding their way into the field from a completely different avenue and just kind of discovering it and saying, "Oh, I can use this stuff, and this is pretty cool."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very like broadly applicable. And yeah, I remember seeing my first few maps that we put together. I worked at a place called Linville Gorge, collecting a lot of data regarding an invasive species. We wanted to measure the impacts that it was having on the ecosystem. So I remember we spent like 3, 4 months collecting all this data and then got back and saw it on the map for the first time. And it was like, oh, this is everything that we did, and this is what it means, and this is why we did it. So yeah, it was really cool experience.
For sure, for sure. So, how did you get from there to Esri then? How did you make that transition and that progression?
Yeah, I think I got kind of lucky. I think that my role at Esri was kind of meant to be. It sort of just fell into place. But yeah, I graduated college, found my first job at Duke Energy, mapping out primary, secondary distribution systems throughout North and South Carolina. And then I was recruited to work at Esri by one of our recruiters in HR. She kind of reached out on LinkedIn and we had an interview. And I remember each step of that interview process, there were 3 main large interviews. I would kind of temper my excitement and be like, this is a big company, I might need some more time and experience under my belt, so we're going to play it by ear, but it kept going well. And I remember my first interview at our Charlotte Waverly office when I lived in North Carolina. I was waiting in the lobby thinking, this place is really nice. They have really fancy furniture, really fancy walls. I don't know if I'm gonna get this. So yeah, the interviews went well. I think that they hired me because I was young and they could kind of mold me, and because I'm passionate about GIS and can talk about it.
You're definitely passionate about it, but you're also really sharp too, James. I mean, you're definitely smart, and you can pick things up really quickly. So I absolutely know why they were interested in you, and I've only talked to you a few times. So
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you worked for Duke Energy for a little bit, and so that kind of got you a little bit of background in the utilities. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and really what you did there, without getting
Yeah.
into any sort of details that you're not supposed to share? Because I know
Oh,
in the utilities
oh,
space,
sure.
sometimes you're not supposed.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think most of what I gained, so transitioning from Duke to Esri, I really saw the broader scope of enterprise GIS and how that worked within utilities. But yeah, I got great exposure to it when I worked at Duke. Just kind of working on a team. Like I said, I was a mapping tech, so pretty low on the totem pole. I think most of what I learned there is the value that our data had. So how we fueled operations around the state or multiple states with good GIS data, and how dependent our field crews were on that data for, of course, accuracy, getting to their jobs, filling out what they need, but also safety. Um, so yeah, I at Duke I learned a lot about the value that GIS has to an organization. And then as I started transitioning to Esri, I really saw more about how it works, how it's architected, what integrations kind of look like, a lot more depth after I sort of transitioned here.
That's amazing. That's awesome. I love it when we have people that come, and I was one of those too, so I shouldn't be talking about it like third person situation, but when you move through these different backgrounds and you gain these experiences, and then you bring that to Esri, and you can either share that with others or use it in the role, what they bring you in to do here at Esri. It's so I just feel like it's a full circle type situation.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, it feels really good. Mhm.
when you came to Esri, did you come straight to the small utilities team? Is that right?
That's right.
Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. So what were some of the challenges that you had when you were working with those utilities? Because a lot of times utility teams, they have limited resources, and it's just really hard for them, especially with those smaller ones. The
Yeah.
small.
Yeah, and we always there needs to be like a case to bring in resources at any time. So with the small utilities, it was even a little larger where it was like, most of the things that we could do with the small utilities I could kind of talk through. And I'll talk in a bit more detail about that. But it was really fun working on the small utilities team. So I got thrown into a portfolio of like 800 accounts. Throughout the Midwest and Northeast, and a lot of that was through COVID. So I made a couple trips before COVID, but through most of my time on the team, I couldn't meet face to face with the customers. But yeah, it was really great supporting a lot of small utilities because it was kind of like you could iterate through these really quickly. I could make the customer successful and learn a lot about their organization and, within my role, what worked and what didn't work. And then I can reapply that to the next engagement. So it became really, I became sort of not completely, of course, but kind of a one or a like one-stop shop for Esri ArcGIS.
Mhm.
Where I had a lot of that like introductory knowledge where I could get people started with the technology in sort of a lighter way than what we would see with like a tier one utility.
I know in my experience with the larger utilities, it's more, you feel like it's more moving a ship, turning the ship when you're
Hmm.
having to implement something. It's a big process. You have lots of parts and pieces and people, and there's all sorts of other types of technologies that they've kind of built internally that are tied into things. I mean, it's a multi-year, process situation.
Yeah.
And so, do you find with the smaller utilities turning that ship is a little bit easier for them. They don't
Yeah,
quite so much
definitely.
tied into it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're much more nimble. So one of my favorite things about working with them is how fast you can see that transformation take place. Where with my users now, they do excellent, like world leading work, which is awesome. But yeah, with the smaller folks who also do a lot of great work, it was really fun seeing them move from, very archaic paper-based workflows to a full GIS system of record in a matter of months.
Oh
Um, I
yeah.
had I had one story that I pursued with a municipal lighting plant in the Northeast, where within 6 months they moved from completely paper-based to one of our data management solutions. So they could just, start cataloging all of their data in the field and building this repository of information. And then, yeah, a small district, a small number of employees, so they could be really quick, build out all of their GIS data pretty fast, and then modernize within, I think it was like 2019 to 2020, the last few months there.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think I can see where that would be super fun too, to work with them and really see the progression. Because a lot of times when you work with the bigger ones, the bigger utilities, and it just takes them longer, it's still fulfilling to see that process go through. But when you can move through it quickly, with the
Mhm.
smaller ones and see them using it, and they're gaining value out of it so much quicker
Mhm.
too. I know that
They
has to be.
they're also a lot happier about it too, which is
Yeah.
super fun. Yeah, like when I went on site, the few times I went, they hadn't seen someone from Esri in over a decade.
Oh
So
wow.
they were like super happy to have me there. And then yeah, after they implement whatever solution we were targeting, it was this huge like transformational change. So yeah, super bright, happy faces. And it was also great to kind of celebrate those stories with them, getting them to conferences or publishing a case study on that too.
I love that. I really do. What are some of the positive? I mean, you kind of talked about it already, but what are some of the positive experiences working with those utilities that you can tell us about? Do you have some projects in mind that were really, game changers for a customer, and
Yeah.
something along those lines?
Yeah, I had a lot of really great engagements, and then some that I look back on fondly, but at the time they were really stressful. So, growth within my role was kind of not taking, maybe like negative circumstances or changes. So, like they were so fatalistic to me at the start, but now it's like, okay, we can take a step back and like reevaluate or whatever. But yeah, there was one, telecom organization that I was working with where we kind of built this full solution. I was really excited about it. We went to implementation, and yeah, there were some complications in their process that they didn't make us aware of as we were moving through it. So it was really stressful at the end of that engagement. But we got to an amicable resolution there. It was just a good learning opportunity for me about kind of repairing those situations when they do arise. So there was a lot of learning opportunity for me there. Um, and then as far as more like gratifying or positive engagements go, there were a lot. So I remember one, I don't think that, is it okay for me to mention the name of a client?
I would think, yeah, sure, I'm good with that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there was a group called Corn Belt Energy in Illinois.
Hey, they're right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But they were super sweet, really fun to work with, and we implemented Tracker when it was first released because they wanted to track trucks for safety purposes. And
Okay.
for whatever reason, they didn't have like a full AVL solution. So they were just using Tracker on the mobile device in the vehicles. Um, Really simple workflow, nothing too complicated or anything, but it was really funny going to visit them on site because they said, "Hey, look at our dashboard that you guys helped us make. We love it." And we also figured out that our safety guy is speeding around the city. So he was going like 15 miles over everywhere he went. And that was the guy who would come in and tell everyone to wear their seatbelts and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just really funny that they kind of like caught him with the new solution that they implemented.
That's hilarious. That is
Yep.
hilarious.
Yeah, it was fun working with them.
So I'm thinking about the small shops still right now a little bit, and what can we help deliver for those for the small shops? What do you really think they need, as far as whether it be us assisting, or if it's just in general, what's kind of a pain point that you saw regularly. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, it
This,
makes
this,
good
this is one
sense.
of my off the cuff questions, James. So.
No, you're all good. No, that's a great question. I think it revolves around resources and enablement for small utilities. So, 9 times out of 10, most of what I saw with a small electric co-op, for instance, is the staff who was a lineman has seen the value in GIS, and he or she is starting to build a GIS there. So they're starting really from ground zero. I think in terms of what would really benefit those organizations is training, which we do pretty well. So training resources or a learning strategy over, maybe 6 months or a year that can get them the information that they need to administer things like Portal or ArcGIS Online and kind of get that off the ground. I think also roadmaps. So building a timeline and helping a user understand what activities around GIS are going to be most valuable to them in the near term so that they can start kind of focusing their efforts in GIS. Because oftentimes when we start looking at ArcGIS, it's like, oh, I can do a million things with this. Where do I start? So yeah, helping them kind of focus there on what's going to be most valuable to them, getting a roadmap and learning strategy in place, and then from a more like operational perspective, I think enablement in terms of like cloud architecture, giving them nimble architecture that isn't too expensive, where they can start accessing these more complex workflows or more advanced analytics, things of that nature. So yeah, further enablement and then just kind of that hand holding or guiding as they start taking their first steps into GIS.
I love that. I had a question and it doesn't fit in this spot, James. So I'm moving it down in my
Oh, no, you're
list. It
fine.
came from my assistant over here, so I had to get my
Mm-mm.
brains back together. But it is true though what you were talking about. It can be so overwhelming when you're looking at the breadth of the technology and all the options and all the opportunities that people have to really utilize what Esri offers and bring that in. But then they're sitting here going, I don't even know how to get started. So I'm sure it would be extremely helpful, especially for a small shop, a small utility, to be able to kind of have some direction for how do I even get going with this.
Yeah, like a kickstart. And I
Mhm.
think something that we've done really successfully in helping them is those data management solutions that give them kind of, a simple solution that they can deploy that can do every like initial need you have for GIS. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of traction that we've made there.
And I would imagine those small utilities have smaller shops of people too. Potentially one person shops, two-person shops. That then they're not going to have a huge team. I wouldn't think like the bigger utilities typically have.
Yeah, that's totally right. And it's something that I see even with my larger customers is
Mhm.
they're so bogged down might be the wrong connotation, but yeah, bogged down with their day to day, like maintaining as-builting information or their routine editing processes to where they don't really have the bandwidth to start looking at those big like future objectives that they have. So yeah, it's even bigger for small utilities where they only have, one person maintaining the GIS.
Mhm. It's something that I keep running into in different industries and different areas, different people I talk to when they have those small shops. They're overwhelmed with trying to keep up with the work that they have, and then more work's coming in. And then when you try to look at, well, how do I completely redo my whole system? How do I
Hmm.
implement this entire new tool? They don't even have the brain bandwidth to think about what do I need exactly, and how do I, pull this together, let alone implement it by themselves. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where the roadmaps are really valuable is we can kind of look ahead and say, okay, in 6 months you want to implement ArcGIS Enterprise. So what do we need to do to make sure? And I'll probably bring this up for one of your other questions, but what do we need to do to make the client independent and successful with whatever they deploy? We don't want to get somebody deployed on something that they're going to be on tech support with all day.
Exactly.
So
That doesn't
yeah,
benefit.
planning ahead to ensure that like when they do work on one of these big, large changes, that they have everything that they need to make that successful.
I love that too. That's great. And I know we've been talking a lot about utilities, but you've actually moved to a new area now, right? Because you're on the
Mhm.
water team.
Yep. Yeah, and when I moved to the water team, I moved out to Denver
Oh,
from North
sweet. Hmm.
Carolina. Yeah, but
From
yeah.
North Carolina. I love me some Denver. I love the area.
Mhm.
I've been out there several times over the years, and every time I go, I'm like, oh, I love it here.
Nice. I love the fresh air and being near the mountains. But yeah, before I moved here, I'd never visited before. I just wanted,
Really?
kind of a change of scenery. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Just
Yeah,
hopped on the
that's
plane.
amazing. That's amazing. I used to work in emergency management, and I thought about several times because one of the FEMA region that backs up the region that I worked in originally is the Denver region, and so they
Oh,
like
nice.
so FEMA region 4, FEMA region 8 back them up, and so I talked to them on more than one occasion, not super seriously, but I was always like, oh, tempt me to move out here to Denver where there are mountains that I love to hike
Hmm.
and just the area, and then you have the Garden of the Gods down there, and I mean, it just I love all of it. Everywhere I drive around, I'm like, yes, I'm here.
Hmm. Yep, it's super pretty. I love taking a trip out into the mountains for the day, especially when it's not super cold.
Yeah, for sure. So what's it like to be on the water team? You've been on the small utilities and now you're on the water team. So what's it like now that you've shifted into the new work environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really like supporting the water industry. So I've shifted from the small utilities to large water organizations. So a lot of that change we were talking about are the differences between large and small utilities and how they can use GIS is really apparent to me after the switch. But yeah, I support a lot of our water resource organizations, along with wastewater and potable as well. But yeah, it's really great getting to support them. I feel, and I had the same thing with utilities, but living out in the West where we're so water stressed, I feel a big sense of purpose in supporting the users that I get to support. Um, I support organizations like Denver Water here in Colorado, but then also in the Southwest through Arizona, California, and New Mexico as well. I support a lot of initiatives down there. So, yeah, it feels much more purpose driven to me. I often tell my users on the resource side that I feel like I've cheated my way back into some ecological or environmental type work. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Hmm.
yeah, so it resonates really well with me. And yeah, I something I enjoy about it is that I can kind of call back to my botany experience and specific engagements, like if we're doing invasive plant management or image collection, things like that. I can really call back to my college expertise. So yeah, it's a good fit for me. I love my users, and yeah, I'm kind of the friendly face to them and their like interface between them and Esri.
I can see where you would be really excited to be able to be in the space with the water team now and working on those issues and trying to help them be able to resolve something that's a significant problem that they really need to manage and overcome. How that would be
Mhm.
so fulfilling.
Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So how do you help them and how do you take care of them? Because I know you're very connected with them. Your customers love you. You've got such a good positive personality about it. But how do you really help and take care of them? I know identifying what their needs are and finding out a way to kind of get them through that and help them move through that. I know that's important to you. So what's your approach?
Yeah, so I'll start with like a hypothetical. Like if I inherit a new account, a new organization that, they've worked with Esri in the past, but not with me. I'm kind of, just super friendly at the start and want to build a good relationship with them and understand, what their organization looks like, who the big players are in GIS there, so that I can build those connections and, like I said, be their friendly face. And that's really where I start a lot of things. And then I also do a lot of quote unquote prospecting where I'm sharing cool stuff with our users. So if we publish a new case study or I know that they're interested in a problem that another user has solved, I can kind of deliver them information on what their peers have done to approach commonly held challenges. So that's one thing. And then yeah, like you mentioned, I'm a good listener. That's sort of what I'm trained to do is listen well to understand who are the key contacts, what's the problem taking place, is there a real business opportunity here with the user? So yeah, I'm sort of the listener that comes in and, checks all the boxes and helps them talk through what their needs are so that I can package that up and deliver it to, technical resources within Esri or people who can come in to help them. Um, I also manage all of their licensing for the users that I cover. So we'll talk through what they have now, how they can use their existing licensing more wisely or effectively to support their business. Um, and yeah, ultimately help them grow and help their GISs be successful.
Well, that's what we really want for sure. We want their GISs to be successful, don't we?
Yep.
We want to have a positive experience for sure.
Mhm.
So, are there any interesting water sector projects that are underway that you can walk us through?
I have a bunch.
Giving away too much, like I said.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. So I probably won't mention any account names.
Yeah, that's probably best.
Yeah, but I have a few that come to mind. So last year we published a story on one of my users in Florida. Pythons, not the
Oh
coding
yeah,
language, the giant invasive snake,
yes.
is a
You sent
bigger and
that
bigger
to me.
problem.
Yeah,
Oh, did I? Yeah.
yes. Hmm.
So the pythons are becoming a larger and larger issue. They're continuously growing or expanding northward. So really bad in South Florida, and then they're continuing to see increased populations north and further north from where they've been. Um, so the user did a really interesting workflow where they configured Survey 123 and tracking services to basically understand when these Python Hunter contractors are in standard rate areas or premium rate areas so that they can really easily compensate these Python hunters that are coming in to remove pythons. And yeah, there were a lot of very interesting stories about who those people are and what they do. So yeah, that was one really cool story. It's not necessarily water focused, but it's one of those environmental focused areas where they need to worry about this invasive for the rest of the systems that they maintain. And then, yeah, there's also been a lot of modernization around imagery and how we use drones to support operations, or, more broadly, just cameras. So a city in North Carolina, we published a story on this, overhauled a meter inspection workflow where they were paying, I think, just under 400,000 a year to contractors to go locate all their meters across their
Mhm.
territory. Um, and what this user did, instead of doing that is I think it cost them like $140,000 or something like that, a fraction of what they were paying the contractor to mount these 360-degree cameras on top of trucks. And then they created this um, image detection or feature detection workflow where they could just pick out all the meter boxes from images that were collected. So that's a really cool modern workflow where they've really advanced this traditional, inspection based thing. And now they can just pull all the information that they need out of imagery really easily. And they can also use those images for other things. Like if we had another question, I could go ask that imagery different questions in the same areas. So yeah, that was a really interesting one. Um, and then one other that I've been seeing emerging in California is really interesting. So California is starting to enact new and improved water budgeting legislation. So it's about 400 different agencies and municipalities are starting to be required to look at where there is unhealthy or too water demanding types of landscape. So if there's commercial properties like golf courses or things like that, they need to understand how much water those properties are kind of demanding. So that they can report that back to the state. So that area is seeing a lot of or users who are pursuing, I'm sorry, yeah, users who need to worry about that are starting to look at a lot of drone workflows so that they can fly drones over golf courses and things of that nature to get a really detailed look at yeah, water budgeting.
Isn't it interesting how, the drones came out, and being able to, get your hands on it, as a private person, being able to buy them privately. And the more and the longer they're out, the more uses people are finding for them. Utilities use them. I came from the electric utility background, so they were exploring that and using those. So it's just, I don't know. It's so interesting to me how we just keep finding new and new ways. Your
Hmm.
customers do, especially, to use this technology for, I don't want to say replacing, but you basically redoing a task that's a heavy lift or really expensive from a historical perspective, how they've done it in the past. It's taken months, a really long time period. They have to hire somebody to do it. They have to spend a lot of money to get it done. And now they're using drones that they can buy within their company and have people that are authorized and permitted and trained to be able to use them. And it significantly reduces their cost in a lot of ways, especially long term. They're not having to hire stuff out and spending the same amount of money, even if they do have to hire
Hmm.
someone to come and do the drone scan. They can do their inspections, they can do their reviews, they can do the things that they need in such a much faster and easier manner. I
Yeah.
guess my brain's a little all over the place on this one, but I think
No,
that's the
no.
point I was trying to zero in on.
Mhm. No, I agree. It's really interesting. I think when I started at Esri in 2019, there was a little bit of chatter about drones, but yeah, through COVID and over the last few years, it's really exploded. And I know of one user in California that started using drones specifically because of the pandemic. They couldn't do inspections in the same way. So COVID kind of like pushed them into doing this better workflow inadvertently. But yeah, drones are really interesting. I see them being used for a lot of different things like emergency management, hurricane, disaster response. Um, but yeah, I see a lot of the modernization in GIS or across utilities in general really happening when users can see workflows condensing. Like if we can take something that is 10 steps and make it five, that's going to be really appealing to them.
Well, and then that gets their buy-in too for whatever that methodology is and the product. If it makes it easier for them, it frees up time that they can go and do something else too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
and like I said, they can also use that imagery for a lot of different things. Like, I have a customer who flies drones on, it depends on when the project manager asks them, but it could be weekly, it could be daily, it could be monthly that they'll fly over these capital improvement project sites or construction sites, whatever. And it's provided a lot of value outside of the workflow itself. So in this particular case, they had a contractor who claimed like, oh, we already did X, Y, and Z, and the user, my customer, could go back to the imagery and say, no, we collected this on this date. You hadn't done it at that time, so you need to do it. That kind of thing. They can use it to hold contractors or maybe internal staff to account.
Mhm. Well, it's getting me thinking too along the lines of trends and patterns with water scarcity,
Mhm.
such as those in the western states that you're supporting. What can you talk about that? Do you have any thoughts on that topic?
There's a lot there. I think what, yeah, I think across the board, there's a lot of modernization that's going to be taking place with those workflows. So a lot of my users across the country that are doing those types of sampling or environmental monitoring workflows are needing to go out and routinely visit these monitoring stations, things that they lock up, that they go out and visit on certain time steps to collect data for that day. It's really time consuming, it takes forever, and some days you may or may not be able to get to a certain sampling station. So I see a lot of modernization there happening with IoT devices. I know you'll ask about my kind of future vision for GIS, so I don't want to give too much detail yet, but yeah, I see a lot more like connected devices coming into play in workflows like that across the board, whether we're looking at blue-green algae blooms or contaminated waterways or water scarcity. I see, yeah, a lot more efficiency coming there across the board.
Mhm. And this may be kind of a repeat, or your answer may be the same, but I'll see if this kind of plays into a different space for you. How are the water companies? how are they really adapting to the drought conditions in those
Mm,
western states from an environmental management perspective? Would
mm.
you say you got a different answer than the one you just gave? I don't want to repeat a question, but I'm trying to make sure I'm
No, no.
asking
Yeah,
all the things
mhm.
where I'm thinking.
I think a lot of the activity there, so when you look at a standard water utility, they're not just going to go and like worry about the environment without
Mhm.
the state or the Fed telling them that they need to. So a lot of that change starts with new regulation coming out, just like within the state of California, where California said, hey, we need to start budgeting water. This is becoming a problem. So now all of these agencies are kind of reacting to that changing need. So yeah, I think a lot of that response depends on the nature of the organization. Maybe it's baked into their goals to be focused on the environment, which is the case for a lot in Florida. But yeah, a lot of like utilities that are doing wastewater and potable water aren't going to worry about environmental factors or groundwater recharge, things of that nature until there's legislation that requires it. So yeah, groups like Eastern Municipal Water District are really great and sort of ahead of the game there, where they've already known that that problem was coming, I feel like 20 or 30 years ago. So they've already been pretty proactive with, operational uh, goals around water scarcity, or in this case, groundwater recharge.
I love to hear when people are being a little proactive with it too, especially
Mhm.
if they start hearing things coming down the line, if they can be proactive and start thinking about it and making those changes, then it's not such a scramble when it actually hits and it's trying to implement it and you're like, well, how do I make this happen? Kind of
Yep.
crazy then. So how would you say the user experience has changed with the greater demand on kind of that information management strategy and those regulatory pressures? Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, I think that there's a lot more integration, much more connectivity to systems that were historically siloed. So we're starting to see that SCADA isn't just a good system for, measuring flow of water. We're starting to see value in that system in other ways, so we can integrate that into our GIS. I think that across the board, systems are becoming more tied together so that we can look at data more holistically around these specific problems. Um, so like traditionally, yeah, all of these systems would be separate. Maybe in like the 80s, they would all be different filing cabinets or something. But now as we see needs emerging with new regulatory pressure, maybe a simple one would just be like routine maintenance schedules. Like utilities have to maintain and inspect their assets on certain time steps. There are easier ways to do that. So as these regulatory pressures are coming out, utilities have to look at how they can modernize that and get everything more connected so that they can act more quickly.
That was such a good answer
Oh,
to my
thanks.
impromptu question, James. This is like listening, letting it settle in. Oh my goodness. So I do want to back up in the conversation just a little bit because I've had another question. We're kind of skipping around a little bit. So going back to the trees before I move out of kind of the workspace and we move into sort of kind of bigger picture stuff. Um,
Mhm.
So I spoke with a major landowner recently, and they expressed an interest in using raster analysis for looking at trees and trying to identify different types of trees. We're in the South, and so we've got people who want to do a lot of different things outside, and so they need to look at what types of trees are there based off what the activities are. And I know that when I was at the power company, that we had a real estate team kind of doing similar work, looking at trees and things kind of around shorelines and different things like that. So did you see that work at Duke? Did you see that when you were working
Mm,
in the utility space or with the utilities? Is that something you remember
a
hearing?
little bit. Yeah, so two things. When I worked at Duke, we did have a veg management meeting. I don't recall exactly what it entailed, but
Mhm.
it came up there. And then kind of a funny like anecdote I have is I
Mhm.
was on a big environmental kick in my old portfolio supporting small utilities, and I tried to tell um, a transmission cooperative in Iowa that they should start mapping out butterfly milkweed for butterfly populations. And they said, James, we don't care. Stop.
Yeah.
You know, so it depends on who you're talking to. But
Mhm.
um, something else I wanted to mention, in my thesis, I actually found one of my like takeaways outside of what I was really trying to figure out was that with a hyperspectral sensor, kind of latched onto a drone was the theory. If you flew that over a canopy, with Eastern and Carolina hemlocks, two different species of hemlock that I studied, you could differentiate between them with almost 100% accuracy.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so if you're looking at the right spectra from the leaves on those trees, then you could map out the entire canopy if you wanted to, pretty easily, as long as you knew the right chemical signatures to look at or spectral signatures to look at.
That's super interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that. I'm over here, I'm super basic thinking about supervised and unsupervised classification, and that's about as deep as I'm getting with it in my brain, you know?
I
So when
love trees, so if you ask me tree questions, I'll really dig into it.
well, maybe we need to circle back outside of
Yeah,
our podcast episode and brainstorm a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Um, you mentioned the milkweed example. That sounds like a really great opportunity where, now coming from transmission, I can understand why the transmission
Oh
people would
yeah.
have been like, James, we do not care.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
100%. Yeah,
yeah,
they have their priorities,
yes.
and an important mission. But yeah, I found it, how I tried to tie it in their interest was by saying like, hey, the public would be really happy with you if you mapped out all the milkweed plants. It's like environmental stewardship. You don't have
Mhm.
to do it, but you do manage these large right of ways moving through Iowa. So those could be really beneficial for threatened species if you guys wanna kind of thing.
That's what I was about to say. It would be a great opportunity where you're looking at the sensitive species that could be protected. That'd be interesting data to put in, and then that would be useful even from like a routing perspective. If you're routing out a new line and you need to know or that's there, you already have it, or if we're doing something else with it, even if it's outside of a utility type space, having that type of project and having that information available is so useful across the board to
Yeah,
different things.
and
I mean, I can see why you met with that response, but I can also see how when you think outside of the box a little bit with it, it's like, hey, maybe we do need something like that,
yeah, and one of the big issues that harms those species right now is that pesticide treatment is very generalistic with utilities, so they don't care unless it's like something that they have to worry about due to the Endangered Species Act or something. They don't care if it's a milkweed plant, they're gonna spray it. But yeah, if we could have a good like system of record for all of those different plants that we want to be mindful of, then we could just avoid spraying those. So yeah, there's a ton you could do with it to help.
I mean, it's really promoting community sustainability for sure.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to jump back forward in our list, and let's talk about the future of GIS for a little bit. Tell me, where do you see that heading? I know you touched on it
Hmm.
a little bit ago, but let's get deeper into your thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this question. I did some thinking on this last night, and again, I go to the kind of environmental sampling workflow. That's what my brain kind of uses as the example. But I see, compared to where GIS is now, I see data and processing power analytics becoming more accessible, more extensible. So the kind of future vision that I have is instead of this multi-week or multi-year sampling workflow where we're trying to build a detailed understanding of something to educate treatment, I see a future where we can do all of that in like one site visit or with the right data, one site visit. So I mentioned earlier sampling stations that are often manually inspected where data needs to be collected from the station on site right there. In the future, I see all of those being connected IoT devices where we just have a constant stream coming in. Storage isn't a problem. We don't need to worry about architecture as much with future modernization. So I see the user going out in the fields. Maybe in this case, it would be like a treatment contractor that would be dropping certain treatment compounds into the water column to treat an algae bloom. So I can go out there if I'm the person sampling and I can fly my drone. I can go through a fixed polygon that I inspect maybe on like a weekly or monthly basis. And then the second that image is collected, it can be immediately processed in cloud architecture and then pushed right back into the device that I'm using out in the field. And then I also see a lot of automated analysis happening. So like imagine end to end, I get out in the field, I'm in my boat doing my inspection to see where there might be a blue-green algae bloom happening. I fly my drone, submit my picture, and then that is automatically analyzed with things that I've prepared on the back end before. So I can pump out the exact analytical product that I need while I'm still on site. And
Yeah.
then I see system of engagement changing. So I see like with the new Apple Vision Pro, I kind of see like a future iteration of that where I'm out, I have my glasses or whatever on. Hopefully they're not 40 pounds in the future, but
Right.
yeah, but I see like the product of my analysis telling me where those algal blooms are occurring in real time, popping up with spatial accuracy so that it's like if I'm looking at the lake, I can see a polygon where that blue-green algal bloom is occurring from the flight I just took. And then I can go treat that immediately. So yeah, I just see everything being connected and immediately accessible to the user no matter where you are. Where right now that analysis could take a couple weeks or a couple months, depending on the organization and the technology you have. Yeah, I see all of that happening instantly in the future, so that it is much more efficient.
That's what I was about to say. What I'm hearing you say is that we're going to have better tools accessible for more people. We're going to be, it's going to be a focus on making things simple and repeatable for customers, as we're moving forward into the future and really being more efficient for them too. Because in the example that you gave, if they don't have to go back into the office, do the analysis, wait to see what it is, and then come back in 2 weeks, the album's potentially bigger, or maybe there's more of it
Hmm.
that they can miss. If you can deal
Yeah.
with it right there on site, that's just so much more efficient. That's saving the person time. You're saving the money associated with them and their time. You're saving the money associated with them driving back and forth and whatever effort is involved. I mean, you've got to get a boat out there. It's on a trailer. It's pulled by a truck, and you've got to launch it. And then there's the gasoline associated with that. So
Yeah.
there's all these things that if you can just do it all in one stop while you're there, that's going to be
Hmm.
amazing for so many people.
Yeah, like having a really accurate analytical product from the drone you just flew right in front of you through your glasses or whatever. Yeah, everything more accessible and kind of condensed, where all that processing can happen really quickly and just be fed right into our device right then and there.
So that's, to me, that's what it sounds like it's going to be, for the customers. What about for Esri? What does it really look like from Esri's perspective for the future of GIS? I mean, we're going to need to be promoting those efforts. We're going to need to be promoting that and thinking about how do we make things happen for our customers the way that you just described. But beyond that, what do you think it looks like for Esri?
You know, and I'm not super technical, so I don't know what the building looks like, but I
Yeah,
see it
me
as
either.
sort
We
of
that
yeah.
to the
I see it as kind of the same trajectory that we've been on. Esri is very focused on modernizing the world of GIS.
forward
So
forward focus
yeah,
for sure.
like yeah, so over the past few years, we've made like maybe Kubernetes for enterprise is a good example. I don't know too much about it, but it's much faster. It's hosted in the cloud. Having these maybe options available to the customer where we can enable them to do these things, I think is where Esri is going to be. Just like now, where we have the industry leading technology, I think that we'll keep up that pattern in the future and be building the good products for folks to use. And then we already partner with groups like Microsoft, AWS, Apple. I see those partnerships kind of evolving too, because to enable those really modern capabilities, like being able to visualize a polygon from an analysis you just did in real time, there's probably a lot more enablement that needs to happen on the hardware side too. So
Mhm.
yeah, I see us kind of spearheading a lot of that development and yeah, and then also building the interest in our user communities.
Amazing. I think Esri is going to really need to focus on those areas for sure and be thinking about like you said, I mean, we're a very forward focused company, and we're always kind of thinking of the future and thinking for how can we, make things better for the customers and be more effective and efficient. But, we've got to think about the marketing piece of it too. How do we communicate this to the customers? How do we show them how they really can use as we're transitioning and as we're moving forward, it's going to be important to make sure they understand how they can, what are the capabilities and how can they apply those and use them to be more efficient and effective in their
Mhm.
jobs. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And we already do that today. Like I cruise with that all the time.
Yeah.
So
So, James, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about conferences, if that's okay. I would
yeah.
love to know kind of, a little bit about let's talk through how do you help your team prepare for conference and what do you do yourself to prep?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Conferences with Esri are super interesting. Again, I work on the water practice. My team attends a few different conferences through the year. So my main role outside of supporting the events is making sure that I'm listening in to our customers and encouraging them to share their stories. We have a lot that we'll submit in abstract to present each year for specific events, and then others where you need to encourage them a bit more. So yeah, getting good customers to come to our events and present their great work is probably the main way that I support my team during events. Um, from the standpoint of like broad planning, I don't contribute a lot to that effort, but when I am staffing a conference, I'll also be assigned to specific sessions that my team is putting on. Like two customers will present for a session on mobile GIS, for example. If I'm assigned 3 sessions, then I'll have 6 presenters that I'm working with, maybe 2 or 3 months leading up to the conference to make sure that their presentation is up to par, and really it's less about being up to par for Esri and more about making sure that we're helping them share a great story. So that's my favorite part is helping our presenters get ready, kind of helping them position what they've done in a positive or in a better light to make it look as good as possible.
That's awesome. I think it's great when we can work with them and make them feel comfortable and get them used to it and just kind of, help guide them along so that they're ready to go and they're comfortable about the story they're telling and they know that okay, we've had somebody at Esri working with us on this and so they're more confident about going out and doing the presentation at that point too. More
Mhm.
confident that that their work and their presentation is, what am I trying to say? I'm losing my words today. Just that they have everything tied up in a nice, neat bow, that it's going to be good to go, that Esri approves, and it's going to be, a really good presentation for everybody
Mhm.
coming to sit through the sessions.
Yeah, that's my favorite. That's one of my favorite parts too, is supporting, either nervous presenters or presenters who are new, supporting them because I used to get complete panic attacks. I would totally shut down through middle school, high school, college if I had to present anything in front of a group of people. So I went from that to talking in front of groups of, a couple hundred people regularly. So I love hearing when a presenter comes in and I can hear their voice get a little shaky and breathing a lot or something like that, because I can kind of nicely say, like, oh, are you a little nervous? And I have a lot of different things that I do to help them get ready because I used to have meltdowns about public speaking. So I totally understand the discomfort. And yeah, a lot of my presenters are really comfy by the time that they get there because they've had such a kind of, like hand holding or comfortable experience with me.
Mhm. That's awesome. I'm so glad you do that for them. I'm like you. I used to absolutely just have a full on panic attack. I've actually run off stage when I was in college when we had to go and present. If my college advisor hears this, we had to go and present at I think we went to like a Sea Rug type thing and like the students had a section and you had to take your senior stuff and oh yeah, I
Mhm.
ran off terrified. They had to get me out of the bathroom and it was a
Oh,
whole thing, yeah. But
yeah.
now I'm like you. I've moved on and I can present in front of a couple hundred people and it's, not I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not a big deal. It is a big deal, but I can do it now.
I've
I've
learned a
re-
lot about presenting since I've worked at Esri, so I'm always super comfy now. As long as I'm prepared and it's not like an on the spot kind of thing. But my biggest experience for growth in public speaking was in college. My senior year, last semester, I had two presentations for my final project for a class. So the first one was just 2 minutes, tell everyone what you're working on and what you've done so far. And then the next one was the final presentation, maybe 2 or 3 months later. And the first one, 2 minutes, very casual. I lost my breath. I couldn't breathe one time up there and ran back to my seat in shame, and just kind of like mumbled through it as best as I could while not breathing. And so I knew that that was a problem. So I went with a friend of mine named Mags, and we did maybe like 10 or 15 dry runs and critiqued each other. And I'd been through it so many times at that point that I was really proud at the end of the year that I could talk through it pretty comfortably. But yeah, since then I've grown a lot more, just needing to be in front of our users here at Esri. There's a certain like polish or shine that you need to have.
For sure. And Esri does such a good job too, as far as getting presenters ready and whether they're going up for the plenary or going up for, any other presentation. We have a lot of resources available to help us, do that and help us get through and get better at our presentation style. And then that translates to the people that we get to work with too. If we have to help somebody get through something or coach them along, well, then we have something to pull from as far as experience goes. So,
Mhm.
Esri does do a good job of making sure that we're ready to go when we have presentations and things like that.
Yep, definitely.
And I love too that they support us helping the customers and the presenters, helping the presenters be able to get comfortable and be ready to go, because they want it to be a good experience for them as well. They want people to enjoy getting to present. They want the customers and the presenters to have a good experience, so they'll want to do it again, right?
Yeah, and one of my favorite things about our international conferences, so user conference, of course, and then IMGIS, the infrastructure management and GIS conference, we get a bit of international too. A lot of times the presentations are a big moment of pride for their organization or even their community, which I really love being a part of. I moderated a session with a presenter who had some great work to share from Chile, from Santiago, Chile area. And yeah, before their session, they were in maybe 15 minutes early to record a little like couple sentences and a video to send back home, and like, hey, I'm gonna be here, I'm in California presenting yada yada yada. It was a big moment of pride. So yeah, there's that, and then it's also a big career builder for some people. Your GIS department can get a lot more visibility and be seen as much more credible if you're presenting work at events.
And you know what I love too, even when I was a customer, I had gotten accustomed to presenting. I had the opportunity to do that several times, but I love taking new people too and getting the opportunity or having the opportunity for them to present. I had someone on my team last year at the UC when I still was with Power Company, and we presented together, and that made her feel better about getting to go and do it was her first UC and her first opportunity to present. And I think she felt a little more confident that we were going up there together and doing it. And so I love getting to take the new people in and getting to help, walk them through, show them the ropes. And I know other customers, that has to be great for them as well, to be able to bring their newer people, get to have them up on stage and presenting the really amazing work that they've been doing. And like you said, it's a really good, opportunity to build their careers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's always really fun to watch.
Hmm. I love that. So we've talked about preparation for conferences when we're presenting. Do you do anything differently when you have a customer who's just attending the conference? Maybe they're not presenting, but maybe if they haven't gone to the conference before, if it's a new one for them, or if they're trying to make sure that they maximize a particular conference, what do you do to help get them ready
Yeah,
for?
there are a couple things. So before and at the event, if I'm at the event or if I know I'm going to be at the event, then I'm kind of their host and I'm there for them the whole time. They have my cell number and can get in touch with me with any questions. But leading up to conferences, if a customer asks, I'll usually put together a list of sessions that will resonate with them. If they're migrating to utility network or they're interested in experience builder or maybe they're a director of IT and don't know a lot about GIS, but they'll be there. I'll take all of those things into account about who the person is that's attending and what they want to learn and kind of curate the event for them. So everything they'll be interested in, I'll kind of package it up and send it over in an email. But yeah, it's kind of being a good host. I think that that's kind of what it boils down to, like being as my Italian family would call it, being classy and being a good, steward to the customers that are attending. Um, yeah, I'd say that that's most of it. I help with their general questions leading up. I help them plan for the event. And then if I'm going to be there with them, then I'm kind of their host and their buddy that they can connect with easily and, get questions answered.
I know that has to make them feel so much better. And I've heard that you're really, really good at that, James, too. So
That's like the name of the game for me is be classy, be good to our users.
Mhm.
That's the like most important thing to me.
Well, just taking care of them and making sure they have a
Yeah.
good experience. I mean, that's huge. You don't want them leaving and just being confused or just kind of wandering
hmm
around or feeling like they're
Yeah, or
lost.
like,
Never
yeah,
good.
not getting what they want out of it. And there's so many
Mhm.
networking opportunities at our events. That's something else that I'm really good at. So at socials, I am very good at spotting out the quiet person who's like, who do I go and talk to and stuff.
Mhm.
And I'm the one, I call it red badge power. When you have the red lanyard, it gives you
Yes.
the ability to talk to anyone. So I'll go, I'll kind of like call them over and say like, "Hey, how are you? I'm James. I work at Esri, blah blah blah. Who are you? What do you do?" And I'll kind of introduce them to other people. And often I'm running around at these events a lot, so I'll kind of, go introduce them to a new group of people, and whether it's fair or not, after that I'll say like, "Okay, you guys have fun. I gotta go," and I'll like
Yeah.
go on to the next thing. But or I'll stay for a while, but if I have something that I have to get to, then I'll kind of do like a comfy handoff, if you will, and like
Mhm.
introduce them and make sure that they're having a good time. And then I saw two developers at one of our socials, and I knew because they were both pretty quiet, and it was all salespeople, so they didn't have anyone to talk to. So I connected them together, and it was a match made in heaven. They had a great evening.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That's something Remy's really good at too. When he's at a conference, well, for one thing, he knows everybody just about it.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yep.
but he definitely helped me out a lot when I was a customer with introducing me and letting me be stuck to him like glue and get to go and meet different people that I would have been the wallflower, honestly, sitting in
hmm
the back. But you're right. We get the red badge superpower where we can just go up and talk to people, and then they
hmm
like talking to us, like they want to talk
Yeah.
to us. So.
Yeah, yeah, it's really fun because it's not, I've never been like a super social person outside of work. So yeah, no, red badge power is definitely like distinct to me because if I go to a conference that isn't Esri's, I'm often the quiet person too. So yeah, I can kind of spot when it's happening and help out with my red badge power.
I love that you look for that though. I love that you take the time and take the initiative to try to make those people when you identify it and see that they're kind of sticking to the background and not really engaging, that you try to make sure that they do get to have a good experience and go engage with them and talk to them. I just love that so
Yeah.
much, James.
Yeah, people fly from across the country to be at these events, and yeah, I feel bad when someone's there from, like Texas in the middle of California for 3 days, and they're kind of feeling like they don't have someone to talk to. So yeah, I go and help
Mhm. You're so sweet. That's so great of you. So, what about when you take a new person, like a new Esri person? How do you help them prep
them.
and get ready, whether they're presenting or if they're just going to the conference? I feel like as Esri employees, we have a little bit different responsibility when we go versus when we go as a customer. So,
Mhm.
how do you get somebody ready for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess Yeah, I kind of talk them through the experience that I've had. So, how I handle the events. There's the kind of work-oriented part of our conferences where we need to be having strategic conversations, making sure that we're meeting with our users that are in attendance and all that good stuff. So we talk through those things like what will be productive for you during this time. And then also just sharing that, message about stewardship. So making sure that we're being a good host, don't just kind of go sit with a bunch of other Esri people the whole week. We want to be engaging with our users. And then, yeah, just answering questions that they have around maybe moderating or staffing our booths where customers come up to see demos and ask questions. So yeah, just general like guidance around the event. And then over the course of the week, it's really great being there with our staff because we're all together the whole week, during the day, and then at socials and things of that nature after. So yeah, we're kind of like buddies through the week, and then yeah, just general guidance and making sure that they have someone to answer their questions and all that good stuff.
You're good. You're so good at it, James. I know anybody that comes and you're their host, they're gonna feel like they just have the most amazing experience, and
Hmm.
they're gonna want you to host them all the time. That's the only
Yeah,
danger of this is that you're gonna have all these
yeah.
buddies coming in year after year.
And they don't always send me to the event. So our
Mhm.
customers will kind of request me. I've had a few request me to be there, and it's like, sorry, they didn't staff me this year. But
Sadness.
yep, it's funny.
James needs to be the conference maitre d'. Like he just needs to
Hmm.
be the
Put me in. I would love it. Yeah.
uh-huh, uh-huh. It says volunteers tribute, right?
Hmm.
Um, So, one of our goals is to cross pollinate ideas between the industry. And it sounds like, there's really a lot of that at the grassroots level that we've kind of talked about. How can we better, we've been talking about conferences and how we get people to conferences, but how can we better support the utilities or really any other industry that may not have the resources to attend conferences? How do we make sure they're taken care of? How do we, make sure that they get the connections and the networking that they might not, that they won't get if they don't go to a conference, but how do we replicate that for them? Does
Hmm.
that make sense?
Yeah,
Is that,
it does. Yeah, that makes good sense. Yeah, so I mentioned in an earlier question that I see myself as kind of our users connector piece at Esri.
Mhm.
So part of that is internal Esri resources, but then that's also people around the country that I know are doing really good work with Esri technology. So that can be other customers. Maybe a customer comes and presents some work at user conference, and then maybe we publish a case study on it or something like that, and there's a paper available. I can send that paper over to customers as I'm talking with them about it. So that's a good thing about some of our case studies is it's good collateral for users to learn about what's happening in the market. But I can also facilitate introductions and things of that nature to different organizations. So two of my customers I introduced recently because one of them had a need that I knew the other was already kind of approaching with GIS. So I kind of introduced them for that cross pollination so that they can kind of share ideas and talk about, similarities and differences in the workflow that they have in mind or the problem that they're targeting. So yeah, they can kind of share that way. So and another thing is, we often do a virtual component to our conferences. So not everything will be on that virtual platform, but if you can't attend, it's a good way to get some of that content over to you. So yeah, I'd say part of it is that virtual attendance, and then the other part is having a good connector piece, like an account manager at Esri that can kind of distill that information to you from where you need it. Like if a customer comes to me and says, hey, is anyone doing something like this? Or hey, I saw this presentation and I want to do something like this. I can kind of facilitate introductions to the experts who have done that work.
Would you encourage your customers to connect with you and reach out if they've seen something or if, they've identified someone that they would like to reach out to? Would you encourage them to kind of connect with someone, with yourself or someone in your similar position and see if that is a possibility? And what else would you encourage them to do beyond just that if they're trying to kind of build their network and they can't
Mhm.
they can't get out to conferences and meetings and things like that?
Yeah, I'd 100% encourage them to talk to their account manager, or if you don't have access to an account manager, like some of our accounts don't have a designated person assigned to them, you can also call in to customer service and ask them about the collateral, and they can connect you with people who would know more, be in that industry that you're interested in. So there's a lot of ways to do that. Um, and outside of, connecting directly with Esri, um, or, like a point of contact at Esri, we also have a lot of like LinkedIn accounts, Twitter accounts, things of that nature, from our marketing teams where you can connect with them and then they share new case studies, new webinars that we're hosting and things of that nature. So there are a lot of ways to get connected with Esri. I think it just comes down to putting in some effort to make those connections.
For sure. And I know some people can, sometimes feel a little overwhelmed at trying to do that, especially if they're not getting to do some face-to-face connection. But I do feel like it's important to kind of peruse through those social media channels and see what are you interested in, see what piques your interest. And the more active you are on, let's just say LinkedIn, for instance, if you're active on there and you're connecting with people and looking at posts and liking posts or maybe commenting on posts, you're going to see more of those things. And then that's going
Yeah.
to show you more things that you may be interested in. So the more of that you do, the broader that network gets, and you can strike up conversations. I've had people reach out to me, on LinkedIn before that didn't know me. They just saw me present or they saw a post and they wanted to talk to me more about it. And I didn't mind that one bit. I love that when people,
Mhm.
have something like that
Yeah,
happen.
and it is a really necessary part of GIS too to stay connected with other users because our technology is evolving so rapidly that, some people who haven't really connected with Esri or, even their peers in their, respective geographies, they might still be on like a client server approach or still be using ArcMap and the geometric network or something of that nature because they haven't tapped into the market to see what's changed. So they don't know that there's a lot more innovation and efficiency to be had with modernization without kind of connecting back into, the GIS system or whatever you call it.
And it can be so nice to talk to a person about it or to connect with a person because, you can have a lot of people, um, you can have, let me get my thoughts together, James. You can have, it can be overwhelming, especially like you said, if someone's kind of, you know, I don't want to say, I don't want to say out of touch. What am I trying to say? If someone's a little bit disconnected and they are trying to get kind of reconnected back in, and like you said, see what's changed, you're reading all these blogs and you're reading all these posts and you're seeing all this stuff. And sometimes you just need to have a conversation about it, and being
Mhm.
able to connect with those people and set up an opportunity to maybe have a call like, a Zoom call or a phone call or something where you can ask some questions and, feel better about what you're reading and what you're seeing. You can really hear someone else's experiences and what they're going through and kind of how they got started. I feel like that makes that process
Mhm.
easier, especially if you have been a little
Yeah.
bit. What would you agree?
100%. Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially when you're looking at specific like the utilities, for instance, like water or electric. There are all kinds of different things that they're doing with the technology. But if I haven't talked about GIS with anyone in 10 years and I need to connect back and I talk to my peer and they say, "Hey, we're doing this, and this," I can start to understand what is most valuable for me to approach too. Like GIS or ArcGIS as a system or a platform is so large and there's so many things that you can do with it that once you start getting that taste, it's important to start whittling that list of things down to what is most valuable to you. So that's another area where connecting with your peers is really valuable. They can say like, "Oh, well, we did this analytic thing, we did this mobile thing, but our mobile was super easy and it was really effective for eliminating paper-based workflows and getting more accurate data." So you can start to learn what is most valuable for you to approach instead of trying to do 50 different things at once.
You have such a good approach to this, James. I'm loving talking to you and interviewing you and working through these things. You have such a good, I don't know, you have really good ideas and a really good approach to this. I just know your customers love you so much.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. They do. They do. They can't get enough of me. No, I'm just kidding.
That's 100% true. I know it is.
Yeah.
So that rolls me into my next question that I had for you. You're always so positive. You seem to just really enjoy your career. You love your job. It's amazing to be here at Esri. I'm still in that honeymoon phase. I think about it, but you really stand out to me in terms of your attitude and just your overall nature. What are the things that motivate you and what keeps you so positive?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really good question. So I thought about it a little bit, and I think that first and foremost, I'm really grateful. I feel really great to be here, and I think through elementary maybe, and definitely middle and high school, I had a lot of maybe like self-doubt that I wasn't going to go very far in any real career path. I was going to have a different, path in front of me, but career success wasn't going to really be in the cards. I just didn't really have the confidence to see ahead that far. And it was before I really found like biology and GIS. So I didn't really have my passion in place yet. But overall, I feel really grateful to be here. And I think that that's what keeps me really happy is I just don't have anything to be upset about, you know? And I think it's also really simple. Like, yeah, I think it's just really simple for me. I feel really grateful to be here and I'm really happy to be where I'm at in my life. And I think that sharing that is super important too. Like, yeah, I think it's as simple as that. Like, I'm just really happy and I feel really fortunate to be where I am.
I feel the same way as far as, being at Esri. I feel very grateful to have the opportunity. Being a GIS person for, several years, quite a while. I was like you too, kind of moving through school. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I wasn't one of these people that my best friend knew she wanted to be an attorney for forever. And her
Hmm.
husband, we picked him up in high school. He knew he was going to be an engineer, like they just knew what they were going to do. And I was over
Hmm.
here like, I don't know, I might be a journalist. I might go into and do business. I'm all over the place. I changed my major several times, found geography, found GIS, and like you said, found a passion and loved it. And here we go. But I just never was one of those kids that I'm going to be a vet or a doctor or whatever from the time that I was little. So I think moving through and not really knowing and having some uncertainty about what you're going to end up doing, and then when you find your passion and you land in GIS and you're watching these this technology grow and these opportunities grow and the breadth of areas that it's applicable to. Obviously we kind of really look up to Jack as far as being able to get the company at where it's moved to and being able to lead it and lead us and everything. So it's amazing to be a customer for so long and then get to be here and look at it from
Hmm.
inside. It just I feel very fortunate from my perspective too. The same way that you're talking about to be here. I mean, it's a little bit surreal every day when you wake up and you're like, I
Hmm.
really work at Esri. Like I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, and with the yeah, like yeah, with the kind of procession of events from my high school to now, I feel like I'm just happy every day because I'm always kind of celebrating that growth that I've had since then. So yeah, just being here and having the opportunity and having a really important opportunity to support some of the biggest water organizations around the country, that's not a responsibility that I ever anticipated and that I feel really privileged to have. So yeah. And then I also had another point. I'm also just generally super sensitive. So things that make me happy or make anyone happy make me super happy, And so yeah, I think I'm just generally a super elated person.
Would you say you're more of an empath? Do you feel things
Yeah.
more
Oh
than other
yeah.
people
Yeah.
sometimes?
So there's like the right happy side of that, and then when something bad happens there's also the like that can hit me like a train. But yeah, no, I definitely consider myself to be like very emotional or like empathy or yeah.
You're in tune with your inner James, right?
Yep.
But that's awesome because we need people like that. We need that energy and that positivity because I know anytime I call you James, I'm gonna get amazing James. I'm gonna get super
Hmm.
positive, happy
Yeah,
James,
and
for the
yeah,
most
you know
part.
what?
So
I think it blends into work more for me than it does normally with people. Like I'm just
mhm.
myself. I'm here to be myself. And yeah, if I need to do something more, I can grow and I can change. But yeah, I'm gonna be me while I'm here. Yeah.
Well, don't ever change that part of you, James, because that's
Oh,
important.
thanks.
So besides just kind of what we've been talking about as far as, you're in a good place and very grateful to be at Esri and all of that, what really inspires you and kind of what gets you out of bed every day? What really speaks to you as far as what makes James tick?
Mhm. I thought a lot about this, and I'm a pretty like neutral person. There's not a lot that like like that I'm focused on every day or that like gets me out of bed, but I think just growth in general or just kind of seeing what happens. Like I'm just excited to get out of bed and like go through the day and see what happens. So I thought of a quote that I'll paraphrase from one of my favorite artists, Erica Badu, where she said something like 85% of the world are kind of followers or just doers, and then I think it's 10% are the creators, the artists, and the leaders, and all that good stuff. And then 5% are observers. And I kind of see myself in that 5% bucket as an observer, where I'm not like incredibly talented and I'm not going to be like the world leader in something, but I'm a really good observer. I think that it, gives me good skills in my job to observe what my users are doing and how I can support them. But yeah, I kind of see myself as, I think what inspires me is I just want to see what's happening with the world. I just want to, like get through another day and keep growing and all that good stuff.
Well, and you seem to want to take care of your customers too. You really want to take care
Mhm.
of them. And, if there's anything that comes up that you can do to help them in a given day, you seem very motivated to do that too. And you're really good at it. You're good at
Oh,
taking care
thanks.
of people for sure. So,
Yeah, that's definitely true. I do love taking care of my users and I love the work that I do, but yeah, it's not like what gets me out of bed in the morning, but I love to do
mhm.
it.
Well, I feel like half the battle in life is finding something that you love to do. I feel like tons of people just have to go into a job and that it pays the paycheck.
Mm,
And,
very
they
true.
do their thing, but and they do it for their paycheck, but they don't necessarily love what they do. And if you
Mhm.
can find something that you love to do and you get a paycheck for it too, I mean that's your golden then,
Yeah,
right?
it's really funny you mentioned that because this morning I was looking through my old memories and I was looking at these Snapchats that I sent from my first job, which I'm very grateful for. Learned a lot there, all of that. Not to disparage my old company, but I found all these pictures of me at work going, I want a new job so bad. I'm so bored. I do the same thing every day, and that is what it was. And yeah, I do feel really fortunate to be here and have something new every day and have really purpose driven, fulfilling work.
It's so interesting how people are so different. So, I've known people in my career who were perfectly content to do the same thing all day, every day, didn't phase them. They liked the consistency. They like to know, hey, I'm coming in, I'm going to do these things, and this is what I'm going to be doing. And then other people like yourself and like me, I'm all over the place. I've got to be
Mhm.
working on different things. It's got to be dynamic. It's got to be, something new and different going on. And so it's just so interesting how people are so different and different jobs and different roles fit better for different people. I guess that's why we're not all made the same, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's a place in society for everyone to plug into. Yeah.
For sure. So that's the end of the questions that I had prepared for us for today. And I know I've thrown a few little extra wild cards in on you as we moved along, but do you have any final thoughts before we wrap today? Was there anything else you wanted to chat about?
Yeah, something I want to, so it's come up in a few of our questions, but I've held on to it because I wanted to save it for this part.
Mhm.
So we've talked about new presenters coming in, new Esri employees, and careers in general. Something that I share with everyone, especially new staff starting at Esri, is to grow like a plant. So I wanted to speak a little bit about that and kind of what it means to me and why I share it with everyone. So I tell everyone to grow like a plant, especially at Esri and within our kind of fast-paced career where you need a lot of knowledge and you need to be, at the cutting edge. People come in thinking that they need to know everything, that they need to be kind of the final version of themselves, and that they need to be an expert in XYZ that's important for their job. But I tell them to grow like a plant because I've learned from plants that they grow really well, but they're not constantly concerned about it. They're not worrying about how much they've grown or how they're growing or if they're growing. They're just growing. So I think that it lends a lot of simplicity to the process that seems really complicated to us. Like we think it's really complicated to be a professional in our roles, and we think it's really complicated to kind of like reach the next level in our careers. but it's super simple. All you have to do is grow like a plant. Like when we look at like a sprouting tree one day, we typically, like the average person, I don't think sees that as something that is alive and growing. It seems very static and still. But if you come back 12 years later, it's going to be way taller than you are. So yeah, that's something that I tell everyone is to grow like a plant, because I think that it's really important for growing sustainably and positively, instead of, stressing ourselves out constantly and, trying to force ourselves into that next place. But yeah,
So,
that
James,
was what I wanted to share that.
that's amazing. I made a post-it and I'm going to put it up here on one of my monitors so that I remember that, because I
Oh, good.
of the exact same thing that you're describing, of feeling like I need to be an expert and need to know the things and be established and doing certain things at a certain rate. And um, someone over here, Remy, is all the time telling me to just absorb it, take it in. My boss too.
Yeah, 100%.
They're
Hmm.
like, just take time to learn and take time to, figure yourself out, figure out where you are and what you're doing. It's fine. You're doing great. You're amazing. So I love that so much. I'm going to put it over here so that I can remember it and be reminded regularly.
Good.
Clearly, I need
Good.
it. And I know there's
Oh
other
yeah.
that need
Everyone
it.
does. Yeah, there's a lot of people that need it. And I get a sort of visual from it. Like my professor in college taught me that a plant does have perspective and that it is a living organism. It has a face, and that face is its crown, constantly like reaching up towards the sun. So that's the visual I get, is just like stretching out towards the sun more and more. But yeah, that's my hippie side coming out.
Well, I was thinking about it from the botany side.
Yep.
It definitely is a good tie-in back to that. So that's great.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I loved this conversation with you so much, James. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
likewise.
you. Yes, thank you for coming on. I think this was so much fun, and chatting with you was amazing. So I really appreciate you for being on the podcast. And
Oh,
you know,
yeah, and thanks. Oh, yeah, and thanks for having me so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
who knows, we might need to have you back in another season.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I appreciate you. And I don't know when I'll be in Denver, but definitely I'm going to let you know if I'm there, and maybe we'll meet up at a conference or something this year.
Hmm. Maybe go to the Denver Zoo.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah,
100%
it'd
for
be
that.
super
Yeah.
fun.
Mhm. If you're in Birmingham, you let me know because we'll show you around. We'll
Oh, okay. I
take you
might be
to
in
a
Birmingham at some point.
yeah. Well, keep us in mind, and we'll show
Cool.
you around. We may not know where all the fun things are to do. We know where a few, but we definitely know where the good eats are. So
Okay, good, good. Yeah, I need some good Southern food.
for sure, for sure. So well, like I said, I definitely appreciate you. Thank you very much, and I so enjoyed chatting with you today.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Mhm. So right now I have a sticky note on my monitor that says grow like a plant. Thanks to this conversation with James. I thought it was so insightful and it was just so perfect in the moment. I just loved it. James has the most upbeat, infectious, and positive energy. You can't leave a conversation with him and not be a little bit happy. He says the positivity comes from just embracing the opportunities of each new day. He loves what he does at Esri and has a passion for helping his customers in the water sector. He genuinely wants them to succeed and tries to help them however he can, whether it is through conference preparation, project support, or some other request. James is there to lend a helping hand. I'm so glad I was able to meet with and get to know James better through his podcast. I think he will brighten just about anyone's day who listens to his episode. I hope you leave this one a little happier and come back for another episode of Geospatial Experiences. That wraps up today's episode. Please feel free to reach out with your comments, or if you have an interesting topic that you would like to hear, please let us know. Thanks again for your time, and tune in for our next podcast.